Hello and welcome back. This video is all about this plant. So I love a good plant story. I love hearing people's connections with their plants, their history behind plants, where they got it, what they've been through, what's the journey of owning a particular plant. So I was thinking about how much I love this, and I thought it might be a good idea to try out a plant story video. So our favorite plants in our collections changes, right? Some weeks you love this plant, other weeks you love that. But for me, I do that too, but a real staple of mine is this plant. So I wanted to go through the story of this plant. Where did I get it? What is it? What's the story? What's the history? What have we been through together? So yeah. So I'm gonna take her off the shelf. She's big now. She's big. Okay, let me try and get both of us in the same shot. I think it's impossible. Is it? Very heavy, very big. And I want to go through what the story of this is, where I got this plant. So it's February 2020. Me and my husband are getting married in Italy. So we're in Italy, we get married, having an absolute ball, had the best day ever. And my mother and my sister were staying in an Airbnb quite close to us. And I believe it was the day after we got married, we went to collect them at their Airbnb because we were going to a gelato making workshop. So we were going to a small local place that makes Italian gelato. We were going to learn how he makes this, and it was really super interesting and delicious. A lot of us were quite hungover, so that was quite funny. But yeah, so that's why we were picking them up, and we go to their Airbnb, and when I get there I'm like, whoa, this person definitely likes plants, you just know. So amazing garden, totally lush growth. Keeping in mind, this is technically winter in Italy in February, but plants were still looking super lush. And of course, coming from Ireland, you don't see philodendron outside. You just don't. They don't survive in our climate. Not that I'm aware of anyway. Maybe some people put some outside for summer, but I've personally never seen any philodendron outside. So I'm looking at all these plants. They have crotons going outside. They have really interesting tradescantias. Philodendrons, begonias, like really, really cool stuff. So the Airbnb was like an apartment that was on the second floor up that had a separate entrance. So the owner of the Airbnb clearly lived on the ground floor where all the plants were. So just beside the stairs, I will insert some photos of the main plant as well, but just inside the stairway, there was a massive philodendron. Didn't know what it was. It was totally like, wow, that's a beast. Like, the stems were super, super thick, really, really thick stems. Also really, really big, beautiful, long leaves. There was one leaf that had a tiny, tiny bit of clearly sport variegation. And I was like, whoa, that's so fucking cool. Absolutely love this plant. Didn't know what it was. I basically said to my mom and sister, like, can you ask the owner if they would be willing to give me a cutting of literally anything, but hopefully this philodendron. So they said that they would contact them before they were leaving, and there was definitely a bit of a language barrier in trying to explain like what a cutting was, why I wanted it, but they were super, super nice, and it was a really funny interaction. So basically They met us, this woman met us at the Airbnb just as they were about to leave. So I was trying to explain to her, like, you know, I want to cut it, I want to chop it. She was like, no, why would you do that? So I was then trying to explain, like, you know, I will take it home and then I will grow it as well. And I don't think she understood that concept or was quite confused by it. But was really, really nice lady. We were both laughing but not understanding each other. And she was like, yeah, sure, go on, you know. Clearly a part of me wanted a cutting of the same stem or around the same leaf as the leaf that had the tiny bit of sport variegation, but it just wasn't possible where the leaf was, and the variegation didn't continue past that leaf on the stem. As in, it just seemed to be a freak thing. It wasn't continuing along the plant. So this lady comes out with a knife and she's like, go on, take whatever you want. So I pick a part of this plant and I get the knife and I'm like whacking away at this like totally massive stem, trying to cut through it. And I cut a piece off. I can't remember. I will try to find older footage of what this looked like, but I believe it had around 3 leaves. And so I very carefully, without having really any plant packing material, but very carefully put it in my suitcase in between clothes. I tried not to squish it, but the way it was, I was like, this is definitely gonna get squished. It wasn't like able to be flattened. My suitcase was also really, really full of everything from the wedding dress, all of that stuff. So I was like, oh no. But got it home and it survived, and it was actually in really, really good condition. Obviously it wasn't in the suitcase for super long. It's only Italy, flying back to Ireland. It's like, I don't know how long it was, 2-3 hours. So it was in the suitcase for maybe a day, which is really, really minimal time considering some of the journeys that our plants go through to get to us when we buy them online. So I take it home and the stem had kind of calloused over by that stage. So I put it in water and I waited and I waited and I watched that like a hawk. I think it got stem rot twice, but I was watching it so closely that I caught it really early on, so I cut it again. So I did give myself quite a bit of space along the stem before the nodes to you know, give myself a bit of an insurance policy if it did rot, that I'd be able to cut off the rot and have healthy stem, callus it over, put it back in water. Side note, if you want to know how I generally water propagate my plants, I do have a video on that and I will link it here in case you're not sure of what I'm speaking about. That's the video of what I did with this plant basically. So I kept it in water and nothing happened, nothing for months. And I was like so disappointed and nervous and worried. And obviously at this stage, in 2020, there was a massive pandemic and I actually didn't see my husband. So my husband had to go back to Lebanon and we had to sort out issues with his working permit for his new job in Ireland, as well as, you know, had to get his stuff and everything. I'm having to move this video a lot because the sun is really quite annoying, so I hope it's okay. So yeah, my husband had to go back. I didn't actually, then there was so many issues with, you know, not knowing what the hell was going on. The world was ending. There was delays in getting his work permit because our country basically shut down, his basically shut down. You know, didn't know if we could even travel to visit each other. And yeah, that went on until September was when we actually saw each other again after getting married with no honeymoon. And yeah, so we basically got married and didn't see each other. So over all this time, this plant really, like, to me, reminded me of like our wedding and when we saw each other, and I was just like so hoping for this plant to live, and really wanted it to like grow in my home as a really nice memory that we had of that time in Italy. So I'm like watching over this plant. It's been months and nothing is happening, no roots, rotted twice, had to cut it twice, was running out of space along the stem just before the node, and it was getting close to the node, so I was really worried. But knowing it's a philodendron, they generally do propagate quite easily. So I was hopeful. I was just holding out, wondering if there was anything I could do to speed it along. I changed the water regularly, made sure it was well oxygenated, it wasn't going stale, there wasn't any bad bacteria or algae in the water. So I just kept it there. Now I can't remember when it was. I will try to find out, going back in my camera roll, when it was that the plant started showing signs of growth. So it did have aerial roots, but the aerial roots are aerial roots, they're not water roots or soil roots or anything. So I'm pretty sure that those rotted off, and yeah, it was a good few months before I started to see any growth, and then it took off. Big juicy roots, new growth points, and it just decided, okay, I'm gonna grow now, and then it really went for it. I left it in water for a good amount of time. It was happy. I didn't at this point have any nutrients that I put into the water, so I was kind of like, ugh, this isn't good. I didn't have any, I'm pretty sure at the time I didn't have any fertilizer that was like, would have worked to put into water. I think I may have put like a drop of seaweed fertilizer in once, but I was really worried about it. I was just so afraid of killing this plant. So I kind of knew that after months and months of being in water that the first leaf that it had was probably going to be like shitty, like deformed or whatever, but as long as it was growing, I didn't really mind. So let's show you what's happened. I left it in water for a really long time to make sure the root system was really healthy before I put it into soil. Probably waited longer than I normally would for other plants, but yeah, just wanted to be really sure that she had enough roots to sustain herself. And then I potted it up, and then it super took off. So it was really happy with the new pot, and that is actually the pot that it's still in now. This does need to be repotted. I am on the hunt for a nice pot to put it in next. So I know that the roots have super taken over this pot and it really needs a new one. It's drying out super fast. So let's show you her. Okay, so here is the thick girl stem. So thick stem. This is the oldest leaf on the plant. This is around the size and shape of the leaves that were on the original plant. Okay, it was kind of damaged, I think by sun maybe, or whatever. It had a few damage points on it. This is new. This happened in my care. I don't know why that happened or what that is. But yeah, so that was the first leaf that it had, and then it also had, this is so hard to show, this leaf, okay? It also had this leaf, also quite damaged, but fine, yeah? So it had those two leaves, plus I think one other one that fell off while it was in water. It yellowed and fell off, and I was like, oh no, this is the beginning. But it wasn't, and it did really well. So after that then, the first leaf that I put out in my care was this one, which honestly was a little bit strange, and I do put that down to lack of nutrients, fertilization. It has like some weird kind of shape here. It's really thick and leathery. This plant is very like thick, but honestly I was quite impressed with the size of this leaf after, you know, it being the first one to put it out and all of that. Then next up, then it was like, okay, I'm happy now. Then it put out this leaf, perfect, not as deformed, didn't have any weird crinkling or anything, really, really nice and quite a good size. Now I'm trying to put this, can I do a head test? Okay, that's kind of a head test, so that's that leaf. Then we have this leaf, a little bit smaller. I do think this is because it doesn't have anything to climb yet. I don't have it propped up on a pole or anything, but that is the plan for the new pot. So we have this leaf, and then we have this leaf, and then this leaf, which is the newest. So, you know, so I just want to show, like, the lobes on the plant are, from the original leaf, are quite round and like deep. They're less so with the leaves in my care, except for this one was pretty good too. Yeah, so basically that's how she's getting on. She's already working on a new leaf. This plant grows really, really fast for me. It's also really, really easy to take care of. The thick, leathery leaves means, you know, it likes drying out. I do let it dry out quite a bit. I've never really noticed any signs on this plant of being like underwatered or really thirsty or anything. I just kind of leave it alone, and every now and again I give it some water. I don't even know when that is. That's how little I think about it, and it just consistently thrives. It's always pushing out new growth. As you can see, it's reached the top of the shelf. It needs to move. And I don't want to move it because I like where it is, but it has to move, has to get a new pot, and I have to give it something to climb. That's basically how it's doing, and it's consistently one of my favorite plants in my collection. The next part of this video is about what this plant is. So let me tell you the history of that. So I take the photos of the mother plant and the photos of the plant in my hand and the photos of the cutting and stuff, and I posted it all over the place. All over Facebook groups, Reddit, I've posted on Instagram once or twice, trying to get an ID on this philodendron. And I'm aware that that's really, really, really difficult with a philodendron that looks like this without having an inflorescence. To identify them without an inflorescence is really quite difficult. There's so many of them. There's so many long-leafed green philodendrons that are shaped like this that look very similar. They also vary a lot between each plant. Like, some of them are much more round, some of them are more pointy. It's really, really hard to tell. So I got a range of suggestions for an ID on this plant, and honestly, I feel like when I Googled a plant and did some research on each suggestion, I never really felt that it was correct, and genuinely just don't know. I did get a couple of people telling me that, you know, it's really hard to know what this is, but you could use species affinity and give it to, you know, the closest species that looks similar. And honestly, I've called it this for quite a while now, because I think I had like 3 or 4 people say this, that it was Philodendron species affinity Sagittifolium. And I call it that every now and again. Then sometimes I see a photo online of a Sagittifolium and I'm like, nah. But then other ones I'm like, yeah, it does seem like it looks like that. I don't know, like, I genuinely just don't know what it is. And every now and again I'll be like, I'm gonna find out what it is, and I do some research and I just don't know. And then most of the time I give up and I just accept it for what it is. It's just kind of an unknown. So for that reason, I will be calling it a mystery philodendron that kind of looks like Sagittifolium sometimes. So I'm going to put it out there. If you have any ideas of what this plant could possibly be without seeing an inflorescence, then please leave your suggestions down below in the comments. I'd really like to know if you have any strong feelings about what this is. If you have any other suggestions, I'm totally open. I would really love to know what this is. I also feel like I'm realistic in saying that I probably won't find out what it is, and that's okay. It's nice to know what things are, but it doesn't really bother me. It's still one of my favorite plants. So yeah, that's basically it about this mystery philodendron. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. I would be happy to do more of these on other plants in my collection if you enjoyed this type of video. What's your favorite plant in your collection, and do you have any plants that are not ID'd yet, or IDs you're not sure about? Please leave them in the comments below. I would love to hear them, and it's always cool to share knowledge on these things. You might find out what it is, you might get some extra tips. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you again in the next one. Bye.